So now I do want to welcome all of you and thanks for showing up in this way, in this new way of gathering, but still able to share uh, interesting, relevant, important, and maybe even meaningful information. And my forte or specialty, so to speak, has been the kink-oriented sexuality, which, I've been in the kink scene for over 20 years now, and I've seen the evolution that it's gone through in terms of when I first began, and I was really excited to finally be able to cross that threshold and step into the scene and be out in the world as I am. It was quite a tremendous experience, but I was also very erotically driven, sexually driven, and as along kink, I'm a dominant erotic sadist, so the emphasis is on Eros for me. So this is when I began. There was very little people, very few people when I go to a play party or a event and such, that the transactions, the interactions were mostly in terms of top and bottom. That was the way people rode back in those days, and I'm sure that's still going on as well. But over that time, I saw people kind of come to the noticing that, well, that's not quite all that's going on really. When I'm bottoming or I'm topping, there's other things showing up and going on, and those are interesting and even compelling. And I want to look more at that. And so I've seen people be yearning, or at least a certain subset of the whole scene, be yearning for this more depth to their experience. And this is also by taking that journey into the depths, there also people are encountering what's still in the way, so to speak, or things that are unresolved or wounded in some way, or resist one's pleasure and enjoyment and fully embodied experience of their sexual being. And these parts that interfere in the, I'm a transpersonal psychologist, so I deal in these terms on an everyday basis of thinking about the shadows and archetypes and woundedness and the unconscious and complexes of the unconscious and embedded experience, and all those kinds of aspects are my typical working with clients around those things, because people do run into obstacles and things that resist, or things that disconnect them or shut them down, and some might be quite well explainable by the experience, and some of it is it's triggering some old part of themselves that's still afraid, still ashamed, still angry, or whatever it might be, and that part jumps out into the world suddenly when we're not conscious of them. Even after we get kind of conscious of them, they can still do that. These are powerful elements within it, that we're learning about how to better manage. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. So they said the word shadow here, and so to be able to step into the parts that I want to talk about in terms of the archetypal nature of DS and BDSM, I first have to bring in a deeper, a little bit more explanation, I feel, to help people move along into taking it into the kink range. But just to start with some fundamentals here, I want to talk about what is a shadow. And I look at it, and many others do too, as a psychological complex that's in the unconscious that can take a variety of forms and shapes. There's not just a shadow, there's a variety of them. And maybe one of the most easy to note is the protector of a wounded part. That's a shadow that formed around a little boy or little girl, typically, to protect them in the world after some traumatic or scary or shaming kind of experience. They had this part came up to like interact with the world, and it's to avoid that part getting re-wounded. and that might show up as, you know, just someone who's really short triggered and boom, they're flying off, or someone who's just aloof, shut down, cut off, done, don't, you know, with usually kind of a surprise to the person that's happening to, like, whoa, what just happened? That this is how the shadow shows up, and it just kind of steps into the life in a moment like that. So it's important to be aware of these aspects, especially when we're dealing with such and even other complex territory of our sexuality itself, and interacting with another in these really edgy kind of ways. So another type of shadow is the inflated self, you know, shadow, the part of a person who is really covering up weakness by bloatedly, you know, claiming their prowess or knowledge or know-how and all these things when they really haven't done the work yet to reach what they're claiming. And I think people aren't really doing these things like, whoa, I've got an idea and I'm going to hustle my way. I mean, some people maybe are, a few people maybe are, but most of us are really, we are, until we get aware of them, these parts of us can be interfering with things we really don't want them involved in. So this is the work, and the practices are to, you know, both get to enjoy the pleasure and also start to untangle the things that are interfering with it. So the shadow work is very powerful and very important, I believe, for someone to advance into their own depths. And this also, projection is another common term. A lot of this is from Jungian oriented or archetypal psychology concepts that are out there, have been out there by Jung and others. And so this is also another shadow aspect, and can be this disowned or disempowered self, you know, or part of the self that has no agency, or little agency, or no agency where it's important, or one even wants agency. And this is a part, an internal part has taken that part's power away, has that part's power, and this part can't, even when it says, well, I want to do this, or I don't want to do that, boom, there was no power in that statement at all, because this internal part, you know, is triggered and goes on. So these are, then there's another part, and this is related often to the sexual shadows, you know, are sneaky, manipulative, no integrity kind of shadows, you know, where they are hustling in some ways. And it is, this is probably more conscious than many other things, but it still has a strong unconscious component where that person has an incapability, doesn't have the capability to just speak honestly. Here's what I'm up to. Here's what I want. Here's what I'm doing. And the other person then can, oh, I see. Oh, no, thanks. Or, yeah, that sounds hot. But there's some part of them that's afraid to speak what they want, you know, and that can be for many reasons. But that's just a little bit of a view of the shadow part. So let's go to the next slide. And the other thing I mentioned a little bit anyway was this idea of archetype. And this idea of archetypes have been around for, well, since the beginning of human civilization. You know, this has been, you know, aspect of humanity that conjures these, you know, and the first one was the Earth Mother, you know, this fertile, fecund, symbolic woman, you know, with big tits and big ass, and just very robust and symbolizing, you know, this generation of life. And since then, there's these cosmologies and origin stories of all time, of all people, you know, have held these common figures in the story, you know, of the hero and heroine, the king, the queen, the, you know, the knight and the maiden and the witch and the shaman and all of those things we all know have been transferred all along, all recorded history or even pre-recorded history, certainly. And so, but internally, these were all generated from internally to begin with. You know, these stories all came out of the self, of the individuals who conjured them somehow. And I believe this is because these are inherent aspects of every human being that they connect and are drawn to or turned on by or get excited by these archetypal ideas of, you know, aspiring to things that they really want to be. And they can be, yeah, that is, you can be fit. It's a very empowering state to be in this archetypal dimension of yourself that is ultimately just the self, you know, that you are being all that you are and straightforward, honest, not wondering if anybody's got this or that on you, and just in the breath. It's always good to remember to breathe. I often forget to, but the breath is very powerful to just take one back down to point zero. But so everybody, we all carry these archetypal dimensions within ourselves. I think they're inherent parts of us, so that, you know, we resonate when we see these epic mythic stories in the movies or books or things we read. We really are turned on by them and get turned on. And this has, you know, been the function of art and theater and the classic literatures all the way to the present, has been to create, map this vision of, you know, what makes sense, what's the beginning and the end, what was going on before and after and in between, that is telling or meaningful to the culture at the time. And so these are all internal parts of us that we are also dealing with. And I think in terms of sexuality, particularly kink sexuality, these are very notable dimensions going on: dominant, submissive, master, slave, all of those and more, many other pairings. But those are very potent, emotionally potent, you know, spiritually potent, sexually potent energies that people enjoy stepping into and really being authentic in the truth of those things. So this is, let me go to the next slide. I'm going to bring up a simple model of an archetypal configuration, you know, that is simply these are things that have been around a long time, and many cultures, many traditions, many shamanic and magical and pagan and all of the tribes all over the world, the last 10,000 years and so back have been operating in this sense of their place on Earth. And that started with the four cardinal directions as the simplest apparent, what was observable. You know, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, and, you know, then there's the north and the south, cold and warm, and noticing this orientation over many generations, these directions got to take on more meaning, such as spring, summer, winter, fall, or spring, summer, fall, winter, I guess would be our way of saying it. And same thing with birth, adolescence, adult, you know, elder, and death in those four quadrants. So this idea of these four archetypes, I think, are very strongly found in all, again, the cosmologies, the origin stories, and the mythic literature, epic literature, of some of which has still been preserved, fortunately. But these characters, these archetypes, are big ones, you know, that are helpful to check in one for the self of, like, how am I doing it? Or if I'm struggling with something, you know, where is the imbalance or what needs to happen here. So the lover energy is, the place of the east, the place of the rising sun, the new day, new beginnings, springtime, birth, and it brings the energies of compassion and tenderness, connection, poetry, lyricism, dance, movement. This is a very heart-centered, warm energy there. And then to the south is the warrior, or S. And this is the place of noon of the day, summer, it's the hot, it's the heat, it's red. The color red is typically the color of the warrior direction of the south. And so this is the warrior energy is holding boundaries, not crossing them, but holding the boundaries, speaking clearly, directly, totally transparent, straight up, and is protective, especially of those that aren't as capable or strong or fierce as the warrior energy can be. And so that protection is there. And then the warrior endures, things are tough. Well, I got to pick it up here and take this load. Just, I'm going to do it. I got to do it. So, that's the warrior capability and energy. And then to the west is the magician energy. This can be the shaman or the witch or any of those, the trickster. Historic definitions, all of these have many names in any tradition that you might look at. So this is more about the intent of it, not a specific thing. But so this direction of the west is the place of the setting sun. The sun goes into the underworld, into the darkness, and brings the darkness. And this is a place of fears. One looks at the night and you can't see, and it brings up all the internal fears. That's the power of that. But the strategy and insight and depth, this is some of the and there's many more that I'm saying, but these are some of the energies, if I can use that term, meaning the feeling of, the experience of this capability of great strategic visioning and capability of plotting and planning and getting organized and getting it all done, and keen insight, intuitive even insight into really being able to get out of the box and open the mind to all those possibilities, as well as going into the depth of the self, or on a journey with another into the depths together. So this is the gifts of the magician that one can cultivate. And then to the north direction is direction of the king or queen energy, and that energy is it's the one that blesses, the one that can see something in someone else that they can't see themselves, but can make them believe in themselves and help that person rise up by just believing in them. And this is powerful energy that the king's blessing can give to the realm. And so the king sets the vision and blesses others, leads, is able to take on the complex challenge of leading the empire of themselves, if not others. So then we can go to the next slide, please. Each of these also have a shadow archetype. And this, by the way, is credited to this kind of model to a book called Lover, Warrior, Magician, King by Moore and Gillette. Really maps out each of these. In fact, they wrote a whole book on each of these four here that are fascinating to gain insight from. But so they each have a shadow, and it's actually a bipolar shadow where there's two dimensions that it can become. The shadow of the lover can either be into this side that is aloof, cold, shut down, you know, blocked energy. And then the other side is the needy, clingy, attention seeking, constant, you know, just that non-centered, you know, at home kind of space. And so in the warrior, then it becomes the sadist or the masochist, you know, the one that likes crossing the boundary, not just holding it, but wants to go in and get a dig in and, you know, take something. It is, yeah, kind of out for blood kind of energy, a very primitive instinct to hurt is on the darkest edges of the sadist. And then the masochist is the one that keeps caking a beating and doesn't fight back, doesn't get away, doesn't, you know, is just taking it and you know, doesn't speak up, doesn't stand up. All of these full loss of agency and it's in a tough place. So the magician side, the shadow side, it's the know-it-all, the one that always has the answers, doesn't want anybody else to speak, doesn't listen to anybody else, is just always pushing themselves out there. And the other side of that is the one who is always confused. Oh, it's too complex. I don't know what to do. I can't do it. It's too much kind of energy. And the final, again, these are just little brief glimpses at all that they can be and all there is to say about any of these. But the fourth shadow complex is the king or queen, and that's the tyrant on the one side. Nothing's fair, nothing is just. There's just, they are totally unpredictably abusive. And the weakling on the other hand is the one that doesn't step up, never takes the lead, can't handle too much responsibility, and even though they might be posturing to be in that position, you know, they are at all levels trying to dodge having to make any tough decisions or set a vision or take charge. So those are the next slide, please. The shadow and the we often call it the gold, the first four there. Sex creatures. Sex creatures are, it's an affectionate term that I coined, brought in to identify the part of us that I view as a distinct part. The sexual persona is a distinct part of the total human, each individual's psychological makeup, and it operates on its own frequency, and it's actually a complete and whole persona that has a way it looks at you, a different tone of voice, a different way its body language is, a different attire, different things that are said. You know, it is, if one is allowed, that part can just come out, and it's right at home in being whatever kind of sexual being it is. But historically, and even in the present, most people are still very reluctant to reveal this part of themselves because it's a very intimate and vulnerable part. So, but this is something that I think is quite prevalent, that I see both in my research and with working with clients and in my own journey through the kink realms, that it seems quite evident to me that there is this archetypal dynamic and pairing between all the pantheon of possibility of how kink and BDSM can be showing up in people. I mean, you look on FetLife, the number of different groups that are, you know, I can't even say them all, but it's a pantheon of different variations on this theme of DS and BDSM. But those are, and getting those groups are getting populated. So that there's in the gene pool, there's an expansive moment we are in terms of what's opening up in terms of sexual possibility that's far off the charts of what it was ever considered 50 years ago. So, but I want to focus in on this idea of the sex creature and this distinctiveness of its individual personification, you know, and how it, you know, how your sex creature operates. If you can, if that makes sense to you. Like I said, it's not a fact that I've scientifically researched and say, oh wow, they're sex creatures, look. But it's more my coming from hands-on experience and working with clients for 20 years and my own. It's a good model to work from anyway. And it also helps one then to understand more about when there are some issues about how this one is different than the other in terms of your social persona. So because if we're not consciously aware of these, how these parts are operating within us, then there can often be operating unconsciously. And when they're operating unconsciously, then we're in the danger of being out of integrity and you know, moving into toward territory that we want to be more aware of. Because I mean, and most people, I'm quite clear, you know, want to be in integrity. They want to be operating, you know, with good practices and with good transparencies, you know. So, and if we don't allow space for and if we don't allow space for other people to have a room for their particular sexuality to be okay, then that sends it into the underworld, into the shadowy world, into the place where the sex creature doesn't really have a morality. It doesn't care about you know, agreements or rules or anything. You know, it really needs to be on a leash almost. You know, I mean, this is its own, but not with any ill intent. It's just what it is. It's like a hunter. You know, if it's that side, I mean, it shows up in many ways. But in terms of the creature side, it's much of an instinctual part of us. You know, it's not so much even conscious. It's just a drive. It's like hunger. You know, just this very strong embodied expression or drive, as it might be, that's going on. So it's important to learn how to channel this into a healthy way. And that's why kink is so amazing and powerful. It really opens up the territory of what a sexual being can really move that energy within them out into the world. So next slide, please. So now we're going to get a little bit more into the kink specific view of things. And I'm comparing in this image the way our ancestors operated. And I mean, our ancestors like 10,000 years ago or more, who were very close to the rhythms of the earth and the cycles of the sky and attuned to their environment. This was even pre-verbal. There weren't words yet, and the certain stages where humans were really in this imaginal realm of symbolic information, and sensorial information coming in, and having visions, and so it led to these things such as this idea that oh, I had a dream about the antelope, and oh, it's telling me, yeah, that's my power, I'm like the antelope, I run, it's just somehow it would resonate, and then they would then adorn themselves, as the animal, that was coming from within it. They felt, they heard, and now they're moving deeper into that part by actually becoming the animal. They're really bringing in, and so they're adopting the movements and bringing it into a dance or the sound of the animal. And this was an embodiment of an internal part of them that was just what was in them, and the environment resonated it somehow, and then it took on this symbolic dimension in a meaningful way, for that individual in that culture. This was really like going all in on being who they are, no holding back. I'm a gazelle, just showing. As they could see, that looks like quite a regalia that's being worn there. And so then the other image, is a contemporary image of someone from the kink realms into the leather fetish, and brings this mystery, and even almost like an insect level out, because these do affect our reptilian and pre-reptilian and mammalian dimensions of our heritage. So we have all of those sensibilities within us. But so I'm just making the case that I think it's quite normal, for people who are into kink to want to be able to adorn, embody, attire, and regale with, whatever is meaningful to them, not to put on a show, but to actually find their own, like these guys would go out, or gals would, actually, I don't even know if they did initiate gals back 20 or 20,000 years ago, or women, and that they were sent out on this quest, to discover things like this gentleman, I assume, is showing here. So, so this is how it can look, just stepping into your truth and being embodied and adorning yourself. So next slide, please. So, but I believe it's good to ponder, each person, whoever, if it makes sense to you, to, consider like more of who is this kink creature, or however you would identify it within you, that is a certain way, its particular way, and really seek that out in whatever way it might work for you. But I think it is much similar. If it is not yet formed or fully shaped yet, or fully, if you're not feeling like, oh, I'm just on the road now, I'm going down that path, and you're still coming to terms with it, of this is something, again, our ancestors did, of they would conjure their power animal, or their spirit, their animal spirit, to give them wisdom, and guidance, and also, but in this case, it is to really conjure this sexual persona within you that can then embody, so that you are feeling it in a way that in your voice and in your movements, and in your either command or surrender, you are, it's in the body, you feel that, it's coming from the source of you, and from this the source of your sex creature, so this is just to offer some encouragement to Yeah, explore, meditate, journal, whatever might seem to bring some ideas for you, just to see if there's something more there, that you might not have considered before. Maybe there's not, but for some, it might be worth the look. Okay, next slide. So I put this in here because I work with clients, and this is often a topic for them of, they've been kind of divorced from this idea of their sexuality or their sexual persona or their sexual truth, whatever it might be called. And they've also, as the culture did, relegated their sexuality kind of to, below ground. It was in the underworld. It didn't see the light of day. It wasn't spoken out in the world anywhere from the person, so they were hiding, in other words. And there's a part of them that knows, I can't hide any longer. This is after decades maybe of hiding, and it is something that doesn't get recognized enough to think of this as everyone has a sexual birthright, and this is an absolute human right to be exactly who you are as a sexual being, and other ways. And this makes it so important, it's so relevant. It's a birthright. I mean, that's big, and most people have never considered, oh, I have a birthright. Oh, I have a right to my sexuality. Oh, I can negotiate in a relationship for what I want, and agree or not agree once I understand, are we or avoid in a relationship that wouldn't have worked because I didn't ask such things. So, but it's for anybody who's struggling a bit or hasn't really stepped deeply, I just really want to encourage you to, even for yourself, to consider, how do you celebrate your sexuality, and look at it that way of understanding how relevant it is. I mean, I know everybody I meet, or work with, especially if they're 50 or something, or more or less, but have been carrying this with them, this secret with them, for decades now, and it's such a strain on the psyche. So I think we can learn to remember or understand that it's okay to welcome this part of ourselves, because it's really a gift to the self, and it's also a gift to your partners, when you're able to embrace that part of yourself. So, okay, next slide. So, and this is part of the struggle, this paradox, where we've lived in a monotheistic culture where things are black or white, right or wrong, good or evil, and the body and sex has primarily been put on that evil side, or the primitive side wasn't as elevated as other things, or even it was denigrated in effect, as well. So this has been a struggle because that's such a deep embedding. I mean, that's thousands of years of embedding, plus then what happened within their own family dynamic and religion, or whatever it might have been, of what message they picked up to understand that I can both be a dominant erotic sadist and still be a good citizen in the world, be a good partner in a relationship, be a good parent and go to the BTA meetings, or be in my spiritual practice. One doesn't cancel the other out. And that's really a struggle for a lot of people at that threshold, because they have a part within them that's terrorizing them. Oh no, if you go out there, you're going to be ruined, or your life will end, or it'll be over. Nobody's going to want you. So again, if you've been struggling, because this is what I think what happens with sub drop or dom drop after a scene is the person's not only maybe went through an intense scene, but they're getting kind of bombarded by these psychological energies. You don't even think of them. You just feel terrible. for a while. Maybe is this assault by some part that you've kind of broken away from, but it's but just remembering, that it's a both, it's an and, you're both as kinky as you might be, and you're still a good and wonderful human being. Okay, next slide. So I'm as a sex researcher, and I'm working on a paper based on some research I've done that is going to make the case for fetish sexuality as a sexual orientation. And a fetish sexual is someone I consider as is driven by an innate, inherent, lifelong, mythic, archetypal, symbolic driven sexuality, is driven to orgasm or other deep erotic states. And for that individual's case, I call that the personal erotic myth. And the personal erotic myth contains all of these elements, but it's really important. What's important about this, I hope to just be one of many who's going to attempt this or accomplish this, of creating that, because it's right now you're legally vulnerable in the courts and other things, because so unlike being a gay or a lesbian, which took many decades to establish, kink is not thought of as a sexual orientation, and so this can affect jobs and child custody and employment and housing. So it's important to get kink, I believe, because I believe it's a unique sexuality that is driven by this personal erotic myth for the individual, and it includes these archetypes and symbols, mythic stories, etc. So for me, it all makes a lot of sense, and this is what's happening, or what's going on for at least a certain percentage of people playing in kink. Okay, next slide. So this idea of the personal erotic myth is this notion that what's coming alive when you get aroused is this personal erotic myth, which contains the fantasy imagery and the storylines and the characters and the dialogue and the action and the props and more that is programmed to, take you there. So it's interesting to think when someone is having sex and they're having, say, a regular sex, vanilla sex, and they're that last minute away, and suddenly a part of them comes, that part of them comes alive. It embodies in a way that's fierce and wild, often anyway, and is vocalizing things even that it wasn't before. It was kind of a little more sedate before, but suddenly this wild creature does show up, and it's like in the driver's seat now, and it's going to go racing to the orgasm. So but this is part of this research idea of making a case for kink, and also what I do with my clients of help them come to terms with, well, what's really true, what's going on there, because it's, oh, I know somebody wants to take, I want to be taken, but well, then by who, or where are you, or what's going, there can be more to the story if that some people are stuck in that kind of place. They don't really know what's down in the deeper layers. Okay, next slide. And again, this is what I find in the realm of kink is, sex is friction, Eros is myth. So kink is in this Eros, so that is mythic, and it is just a treasure chest of vivid sensation and primal passions and intense emotions, epic tales, alluring personas, all the things, and to embrace these, or to get to experience in them with as little interference of our internal things as possible, is quite a range of ecstasy to get to feel, to get to have known, and also to get that intimate with someone who you've revealed yourself to, and if they can still hold you in their heart and bless you for being who you are and enjoyed the journey with you, well, then that's where it becomes empowering and psychologically healing to be welcomed that way. Next slide. So this is a little bit more into that idea of your sex creature and embodying it, because it does have this full persona, that can show up in a particular way, such as in the picture. Some people, it goes to that extent of what they would really do if they could really do something, or if they could even just explore. I mean, some of this is just for people to explore these parts of themselves. They're open to a particular part. It's not their go-to every time. Some people it is, they know exactly who this creature is and what it wants. And, to the extent that people become a creature as as the entity within themselves, that they feel it's just right for them. There's no, it's like someone says, why someone's kinky. I mean, in 20 years, I've never seen any case of someone's kink being caused by some violation when they were younger. It just doesn't really work that way. They wouldn't stay in the kink very long if it was that harmful. I mean, if it was, they couldn't take it anymore if it was harmful to them. So, I mean, I can't say there's no cases where people hung in something that they shouldn't have, but for the most part, I think most people are able to have their own agency for the kink that they choose and who they engage with, or learn it, as they go. So that's the other consideration is, are you embodying your sexuality to its fullest extent, or what's in the way if you're not, and or what, oh, I can, you're being invited to go deeper. Oh, what would I do? So take it in however it might make sense for yourself. But this embodiment idea is totally important, not just embodying to become embodying your sex creature, but just to be embodied, period, is critical to the kink that you really want to explore, to hold either sides of that equation, of that slash. You want to really come at it from a conscious, embodied, present way, which means you learn how to do those things. There's plenty of things you can look at about how do I get present, embodied, etc. Breathe. So being embodied in the general sense is very important to practice too. Okay, next slide. So I think a lot of the confusion in kink, people getting into kink is that they don't really understand that there's a distinction between the DS and the BDSM side. And it's an important distinction that is really important, it's important to consider both because it opens up a rich territory that you might cultivate on that side of it, the DS side. And it's important to consider because there are things that will come up when you're trying to hold that dynamic, especially if you haven't considered that these two are separate and they are different. Oh, we have this kind of sex and I did this, and we are in a DS relationship. It doesn't carry over outside of the container. And this is another element. There should be a whole thing I would like to talk about with ritual, but to speak of it, of these two dimensions, the DS side and the BDSM side, which are two very different. The way I model holding them is to two containers. The outer container is the relationship side. This is where all the negotiation goes on, the agreements, the protocols that one operates under, and all of the other things of life, that are in relationship. If you're actually attempting to have a DS relationship, that's those are things that are important to know. And it's important to have the container where you can, both sides can talk honestly, can come up, bring up the things that might be interfering and resolve. Even in a DS relationship, I think it's important that both sides be able to sit together and speak to whatever is up, and to listen and to learn, what can we do? This is not easy to do this, but this is the purpose of that container, to allow a place where the relationship can have its place. And if things need to be looked at in the relationship, that is both the submissive and the dominant equal ground to, okay, we got to talk about this. But that's also the place where the protocols do apply. Oh, I agree to this, I agree to that, and I don't agree to that. And now within the household, you're operating under that negotiation. And so this is important. Different protocols that occur within the BDSM chamber, which is the erotic side of the coin. The DS doesn't really have to have any sexuality to it. It can, but it can just exist on its own basis there. And so this is then putting the BDSM side, all the things that are taboo, inappropriate, cruel, whatever's agreed to, people can open up to those energies within this container, within the outer chamber, that has the same center as the larger container is holding it. It's the same center. So when you enter the container, you really haven't lost this connection to the center of the outer container, which is above all, do no harm, to be alert, to be ready to do something different, and also to take charge and to lead if you're the dom, and to learn to surrender and yield if you're the sub, and enjoy whatever painful pleasures might been agreed to, if you can, or say your save word, whatever that it might be the right thing to do. But this inner chamber then allows the taboo activity to occur. The kind of dom I am in that chamber versus the outer chamber is totally night and day. It's Jekyll and Hyde. That inner chamber guy is a motherfucker. He's just, he can be a genteel sadist, but he's mostly, he likes to be, the beast, to ravage. To that energy is really natural to me, and I enjoy it. And when I meet someone who wants that, it's like, whoa, am I kidding? This is real? Great. I've been able to live this way the last 20 years. It's been, what a surprise. What a pleasant surprise. What a joyous surprise to be able to live in my truth this way, and have others enjoy it as well. So then when you end the scene and you exit that inner container, you're back in the other realm again. So that's back to that protocol, whatever was the protocol in the scene, what you said, what you expected, what you demanded, what you agreed to. It's no longer, that's left behind in the inner chamber till you come back. And this is how to try to keep things sorted a little better. Okay, next slide. So another paradox that's inherent in this, what I just described as a paradox between DS and BDSM. There's also what I look at as a sacred and profane dimension to dominance and submission. And in archetypally, the dom is the king or the queen archetype, and the submissive is the servant, the devotee, the selfless one. These are big energies, that one can aspire to, to become the king or the queen. That's a pretty big leap to make, or a big thing to aspire to. There's no destination in any of these. It's an aspiration as I look at it. You just want to keep getting better and growing and going deeper into it. But in this noble side, one can look, if you're on king or queen side, as this challenge, this powerful aspiration that you just must do to become honest, to become reliable, to become trustworthy, to bless others, to own your shit. This is the noble path. I think most people who aspire as a dom are really noble, aspiring to this nobility. It's attractive to them. They can't not want that to be considered a quality dom, a respected dom, a trusted part of the kink community. Such things, this is, I think, from a mature point of view, when someone reaches a point where they're really aspiring to something noble, there is a lot that can help them shift. Maybe if they've been a little lost or not been really clean and how they've been operating, to consider it in a way that is inspiring, is something to aspire to. Now, again, I'm just scratching the surface of a lot of things here. So this, so in the submissive side, can be totally aspiring to be devoted, to be helpful, to be in service, to enjoy the pleasure of another over the self. It's selfless, so these are the very noble aspirations to have. This is what people who go into monasteries and the mountains, the caves, are attempting to do in a way. So this is very deep. For some people, it goes that deep. They really want to embrace this nobility within themselves and with a partner, and do their best at holding that up. Next slide. So, whoops, what happened? So this is the shadow of this idea, where we are, where we have to take a look in the mirror and see, well, that's not this noble aspiration vision that I aspired to. Wow, what's going on? What's that about? What should I do? To own it, to look at it, and to learn from it, and keep aspiring. As I said, this is no destination. It's just, you fall, you get up, and you keep on your aspiration, and you make amends, if you didn't succeed, whatever that might look like. But this part, so on the dom side, as I said earlier, it's the tyrant or the weakling. Here we're showing much more of the tyrant. But sometimes that tyrant can be covering up the weakling. It's just this ferociousness that's like empty if you push it. And then there's the weakling right behind it. And this is, it's serious business to really aspire to become a dominant, because you have to look at this part of yourself to get very far. If you don't, your submissive is going to find every button in you and push it and drive you crazy, likely, or tear you down. I mean, ruin. You'll need to do something about it. You have to learn. So this is often nothing to do with what's going on in a relationship when these characters show up. It's triggered aspects of us from long ago that still haven't been worked out usually. So this is showing itself so that you can do something about it if you choose, or find, you have to do something. It's showing you, you have to do something usually. So as I said, this could be covering up the weakling too, the part that is hiding behind this fierce dominant energy. you know, that really isn't, that is probably wounded. It is still hurting. It's hurting about something, and this is, it's like a mad dog out front, you know, that is not letting anybody in. So, and then the shadow of the submissive can be, you agree to this? Yes. Then 2 minutes later, wait, you just said you agree, you know, where this is, or they laugh, or like this brattiness, you know, I think is a part of that. I mean, this can be cool, it can be good, but that can be probably more in the BDSM side. If you're in the relationship and you've just tried to establish some rules, and this person is really just disruptive, not following the rules they agreed to, and just causing, wait, that wasn't a problem, and now suddenly, wow, this is a big problem, of stirring up trouble, and you're not ready to handle it. You don't know how. So, but that's and so these two actually can, these two are like gasoline and oil and fire. You know, they are volatile together. They'll really stir each other up more and more, and that's a sticky situation, I guess you would say. But again, they're showing up. This is a place to look at, wow, what's going on here, and get some help. You know, it's a call to get help, to, you know, work on these things. You know, I believe that's how I look at it. I mean, everybody, I believe, should find their own way. I just say things and offer things, and everyone should be, you know, figuring their thing out. Next slide, please. So this shadow in BDSM is really a potent element of the Eros for many people, where you can allow in the dark shadow, as I said, in a ritual engagement within this inner chamber by agreement. You know, you stepped into it and you agreed, here's the rules, and each side knows what's going on and what to do, and you know, has a certain education in what they're about to do, hopefully. So, but this is the place where, you know, this sacred, you know, fair, just, dominant, there can suddenly become totally the tyrant, you know, just go over there, do that, just fuck up, you know, and just be bringing out this intense creature by agreement. You know, this is what's amazing to me when I bring out that aspect of myself with someone, and I can tell they're just kind of melting into it. It's like part of me is going, wow, this is amazing. Because I mean, that part of me that's bringing it is right there with them, you know. I mean, so kink to me is like deep, this DS and even the BDSM together. It's like a fierce tango, you know, where it's one leads, one follows, but the two dance as one. Really, to me, that's when it really gets deep, you know, and connected together. So this bringing in those dark energies, if you have them, you know, this is the place and the way to do it. And with, and thank goodness, I have no idea why this is, there are partners, counterparts who are happy to step into that with me. Fascinating thing, and I'm so happy, so grateful for that, because it's allowed me to just, wow, really be myself in this deep, intense way, and to be witnessed in that, to be loved for that, to be cheered on. Yeah, bring more energy. That's really a dance as deep as I've gone, and get in connection with this other person, and that's a depth of embodiment. You know, to be unrestrained in that embodiment. No, these muscular tensions in the voice, a lot of people are stuck in their throat when they try to talk about their sex. You know, it just, a part is literally choking. I'm saying, don't say that, you can't say that. What do they think if you say that? And this is muscular, you know, tensions coming from these embedded unconscious things that need to, you know, like you get to that fierce end of sex place, that's when, yeah, everything that's held that part back is blown away. That part is so wild and fierce, and it's the same way, but in a much earlier part of the journey when you get into the kink realms, because I mean, we're talking you can do 3 or 5 hour journeys and to a scene with a partner, and these it's a lot of time to journey with another, and you can really get to some amazing places. But this is this energies that come out, I think the important place is to look at that or query that with a partner, or to be asking those questions if you're on the submissive side, is to ask, do you have any boundaries around language, around body image, intelligence, race, religion, femininity or masculinity, humanity, dignity, any of those places where one might want to go. This should be clearly mapped out territory, and those are important benchmarks or touchstones and an individual to check in. If you're really into edgy, dark edged play, those are typically areas that you really want to be quizzing the person, is to find out where the territory, where the boundaries are. Somebody might says, oh, you can call me stupid. If you call me fat, I'll kill you, kind of response, to that. But I mean, it's, people will have yeses and nos in different spots, not, across the board. It's, people fall into different things, are really operating to drive them into some sort of revelry around being treated that way, or being open that way, being taken that way. And this idea of that taken, I think where these energies are coming from are from our mammalian and reptilian heritage. This is like the, mammal energy is, alpha, beta, pecking order things, and kind of hot-blooded, ravaging, growling and grabbing and shaking, scratching, biting. This is like fierce parts. And I think this is a heritage from that time when we were running on all fours there, and operating in that psychology. That's still part of what we inherit, and through birth, through the gestation process, we inherit all of that previous brain function and organs along the way, along with the reptilian level, the cold-blooded, so the hot-blooded, there's that. This is where the gestures, these gestures come from. Fierce, I mean, that's our mammal coming alive there, the beast. And on the opposite side, the surrender is just this, this is a kind of opening, opening the just the body just goes, into like ecstasy of that surrender. This is coming from our animal heritage, and the same thing with that cold-blooded energy to be in the sadist masochist realm. This is the kind of curious, oh, does that hurt, kind of sadist, who's kind of not touched by their response at all, as just curious, oh, that's interesting, let's try this one. And deeper levels of psychological mayhem that part might wish to inflict on the person, to either suffer psychologically or physically in there. And then this incredible endurance of the one enduring is like, again, they're opening to this, some deep ecstatic connection to, like, just that sensation is just that sensation of being owned, of being used that way, of not resisting, of can't resisting, of that is just such a, there's a kind of a freedom in that in a way. And also, I think beyond by all reports, it's pumping great biological cocktails into the system at the same time. So it's all good. So that's the positive side. But on the negative side is this where things show up, where that someone is still haunted or possessed or in the control of some other part of themselves, even though they're trying to come forth. You know, there's a part of them that they see the slightest in their imagination, oh no, just sign of disapproval, and they back, oh, are you all right? Is that, I mean, they kind of become apologetic, and they're like over the top kind of like in this other state that's not really just, you know, wow, what's going on? I see you move that way. Tell me what happened, or, you know, isn't just taking a direct approach of hearing what's going on, but there's really no choice yet. That person is, and especially, you know, we somehow attract people who are going to trigger our stuff, as it happens a lot of times. I've experienced that as a way to show that, yeah, I still have things that I need to work on. And the other shadow there is someone who's manipulative, you know, like in all kinds of ways, but someone who has a, and this can lead to violations where, yeah, no anal penetration has been agreed to, say. And in their mind, they're sex creature, but I want that. She didn't really mean that. Listen, man, she's going to get, I mean, or he, as the case might be, that this part is angling for a way to get what it wants. And if you're not being in control of that part, it'll try to suddenly, oh, there it is. And like, oh, she's like out of her mind. Boom. You know, that's when strange things happen. That could happen. I don't think that, I mean, again, I think most people are pretty honorable in these regards. So that would have been also a lack of transparency. They didn't say right out loud, I really would love to fuck you in the ass. And well, get the no, but okay, I said it. And you know, that was the problem. They were afraid to say it out front, you know, and this is where the what you stumble over when you aren't transparent and open that way. You're open to the shadows way of dealing with things. Okay, next slide. So again, this is maybe an idealization. It is an idealization, you know, of what is on the path of a compelling BDSM engagement. But it is, if you've seen the tango, most of you probably have, but this is this amazing dance where, you know, the man in this case, it could be the one, I haven't seen the women, but certainly could be either side, of leading in this kind of provocative, fierce way, and the woman is kind of just got her own groove going on, but is like sensually like in the dance, you know, with the man, and her, he's leading, she's following. And this is what can be aspired to in your connection with your partner in this way. And this is when you are opening up to these inner mythos, inner archetypes of past all the tension and the fear. I mean, we've been all bombarded with complications about our sexuality and being open about it and risking it and being vulnerable about it. And people have been violated and tormented, but, you know, in terrible ways about it as well. So, and, you know, and we've been indoctrinated into these terrible things. But this is a call to, you know, open up to these with a partner, you know, so you can start exploring these dimensions within the self, and share what you would, you know, you might, you know, conjure right in, you know. Oh, actually, take the personal erotic myth survey, which is on my website. 40 questions, and it really is a tool to help people drill down into their personal sexual psyche, and encounter, you know, what might be in the depths down there, as well as be looking at what's in the way of embracing that part of themselves. And so this is a real opportunity to come up with your own ways, so research a little about what ritual is, but it's really personal. You know, it's about you coming up with meaningful ways to engage and to address, you know, to get ready to embody, to, you know, move, to breathe, and get a little deeper, get a little closer in connection. I mean, this is very important, you know, get in connection with your partner before you begin anything, you know, just breathe together, you know, move together, touch each other, just hold each other, just enjoy each other, so that you by doing that, you've released incredible levels of tension that might be in the body, that are going to interfere or kind of entangle with how you're trying to be in your scene with someone. Next slide. So I mentioned the personal erotic myth. This is a couple of the questions that people, how they responded. This is with over 6,000 participants in there. And so I guess you can't read their little, you can, I guess, if that's what's at the top. So the question, was they born that way, was 68%, if I can see the screen correctly. So, I mean, most people really have a sense of themselves and can claim, have agency to claim, no, this is just who I am, period. You know, no, I had shit happen when I was younger, but didn't matter. I'm still who I am, and that's what's true for me. So I think this just indicates again that people are pretty in touch with this innate part of themselves. So out of 6,000, that's a pretty good number of people. Next slide. So this was the range of kink interests people checked off where they were at personally. And well, this is the average of the 6,000 or so people, you know. So yeah, way up there, 80. Now, this was not a random survey, and it wasn't a kink specific survey either. So there's a kind of definitely leaning towards a sex positive, kink positive orientation. Anybody who went through the gateway to take the survey probably had some curiosity, but they probably weren't ahead and explore some. I don't have a slide, but yeah, certain 35% who took it had never yet explored or something. But so generally speaking, though, this is the in this population of 6,000, what's going on in their mind to some one extent or another in terms of their range of kink interests. So that's probably been long enough to see what's up there. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of our talking side there. And if this has stirred any interest in looking at some of these things, you can check out my site and my services there. But thank you so much for sitting through all that. Quite patient. I mean, I can't see the room. I don't even know if anybody's left. But I see there are still 14 people here. Fantastic. So let's, if people have questions, we can open that up. And Christina, I'll just let you moderate however you want to do that.
Sure. If people feel like they want to turn on their mics and video, feel free to do so. We had a couple questions in the chat that I'll read off to you now. One was from David. It says, Galen, thank you. You describe yourself as a dominant erotic sadist. Does that mean you identify with the active shadow of the warrior?
Well, I would say it includes all four quadrants, you know, and the shadow aspect. There's elements of each of them that I can access or embody in the moment. But actually, as much as what I just said is true, also, just to throw again on this quadrant model, I put the submissive and the lover and the warrior quadrant, and the dominant is in the magician and the king quadrant. Just to note that, but because though, you know, the submissive really is enduring a lot, is loyal to the king or the queen, you know, and these energies kind of seem to fit as I model it anyway when I look at those situations. Okay.
Great. And then the next question is from Domina, and they say, how may we stay updated on the progress of fetish sexual identity in the DSM or whatever? This is beautiful.
Talk to Christina. She's, we're working on that.
Yeah, I think that's something that Galen is working to get the work out there to be recognized. And it, as we may know from some of the work over decades that Galen had mentioned on, you know, LGBTQ rights, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of recognition, and part of it is people like you joining this talk and taking the survey and adding to that data set. And but yeah, if you get on the mailing list, you'll be updated as well as news happens in this realm.
And I'd invite anybody who wants to be with their video turned on, you're welcome to join in just to see each other or stay as you are.
Galen, if you would stop recording, I think more people might be willing
okay.
to
Good idea.
on. Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? Oh, recording here.